Dweezil Zappa, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And the reason, of course, we have you coming on is for Zappa Plays Zappa, which is coming to Eau Claire on October 9th. It's a 7:30 p.m. show. And what's neat about Zappa Plays Zappa is, obviously, Zappa playing Zappa. For those that maybe have heard a little bit about it and they maybe seen the preview for the show, explain the genesis of the concept of the tour, because you've been doing Zappa Plays Zappa since 2006.
Yes, there's a lot of reasons that I started the project. The main reason that I started doing it was that I noticed that there were people that were under 30 that really didn't have any idea about the music, and to me that seemed to be unfortunate, because I think there's so many contributions to the world of music that my father made that to me I felt were either misunderstood or misrepresented based on how they came to be known. So what I mean by that is, the few songs that maybe got on the radio didn't represent the totality of his work. So if you've heard songs like Don't Eat the Yellow Snow or Valley Girl or Dancing Fool, or songs that have some sort of a comedic narrative or something like that, many people have the impression that the music is really novelty music or comedy music, and that part of it is unfortunate, because he made over 80 albums in his career before he passed away, and that's a very small portion of what his music is. He really was a composer who used a rock band as his orchestra for the most part, but also worked with orchestras as well. And there's some very serious music that is, in all honesty, it's like it's from the future. There's just nobody that took the path that he did, and there's nobody that has really created this kind of catalog. So, I thought it would be worth exploring it, giving people a chance to hear it in a live situation, because that's how I really grew to love the music as a kid, just watching it being performed. And so I wanted to give people that opportunity to check it out, because the music ultimately is timeless and can appeal to any generation. And so that's what started the whole thing, and it has continued to have an impact on people when we play it live. So that's why we're coming back again.
Nice. This next year marks the 40th anniversary of Roxy and Elsewhere, and some of the recordings came from December of '73. Some others that comprised the album. But you have performed this before with Zappa Plays Zappa. What was the instigation to, again, play the album in full, and this time for the 40th anniversary, to kind of go back to that particular album?
Well, we've played a lot of the songs from the record, but we've never played the entire record as a full piece. And we had the opportunity to play at the Roxy in Los Angeles on the actual dates that the concert and recording took place 40 years ago. So we thought that would be an interesting thing to play the music in the same venue on the same day 40 years later.
Neat. And are you hoping for the Roxy gigs to get any of the original players from those gigs back to perform with you guys?
No, it would be cool if we could do it. I'm just not really sure that it's possible. The thing about this music is it's so difficult. You can't just walk up and play it. So a lot of rehearsal would be required, even though the players that played on it a while back could play it then. It doesn't mean they can play it now.
Hey, well, this is true. It's been 40 years, and of course some have passed away. I was going to mention that over the years, Frank played with so many musicians that have gone on in their own careers, you know, the likes of Steve Vai, plenty of folks involved with Missing Persons, Warren Cucurullo and the Bazios and Patrick O'Hearn. Of course, Chester Thompson was back there 40 years ago, and he went on to tour with Genesis and Phil Collins. But then George Duke is the big one. And you know, with him passing away, you know, it seemed out of the blue. For me, it struck me. I'm a subscriber to Keyboard Magazine. I got that issue like the day he died or the day after he died. That was a sudden one right there. He was an integral part of Frank's work. Did you ever get a chance to play with him?
We did, actually. We in 2010, we did a concert in Los Angeles that we filmed, and he played on, I think it was 7 songs, and he was also interviewed. So we've been working on the DVD, and it's got some great performances where, you know, he was on stage with us and playing several songs, and he spoke to the audience for a minute, and he said, it's great to be back in the fold for a little while, you know. And so he's very complimentary of the band and how we played the music, you know. There's an interview clip that's even on YouTube where it's part of this project that I was talking about, this DVD, where you can see him explain a little bit about playing with us, and to the extent that he's very complimentary. He says, I think this band plays the music maybe even better than we played it, which is a high compliment coming from him, because he really is and was one of the greatest musicians that ever played.
Exactly, and watching some of the video footage that's out there from 41 years ago, and listening to his music with Frank, you're blown away by that, and blown away by all the musicians there. You learned, by my understanding, your father's guitar parts, almost to a T. Did I get that right? And if so, how much work did you do to learn his parts?
Well, a lot of people kind of don't understand what kind of undertaking it was for me to do what I have done within this project. So my father wrote a lot of music that has very difficult melodies. Many of the melodies were never played on guitar. Some were played by people in the band at the time. And, like, for example, when Steve Vai was in the band, Frank called him the stunt guitarist because he was able to play some of these very difficult melodies that were written for other instruments like keyboards or marimba or things like that are laid out completely different than guitar. And so I learned a lot of those parts that Steve played, but then I took on other passages in songs that, like I said, no other guitarist that ever played with Frank, even Frank, never played these melodies on guitar. So things like St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast, or the interludes in Inca Roads, and pieces of music like G-Spot Tornado. These have very, very fast and complicated rhythmic elements in them. But even on the Roxy album, what we're currently playing, there's a piece of music called the Bebop Tango, which has probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to learn on guitar, because the intervallic leaps on the instrument are very challenging, especially at the tempo the song has to be played, and it has really difficult rhythms in it. So all that stuff was things that I really had to spend a lot of time to learn, and it's not just something that you listen to it a couple times, you're like, I got this. There's things that required creating a technique that I hadn't even ever had any experience with, and making that become the transformative way that I actually played guitar. So before I started the band, I actually took 2 years to study the music, learn a lot of things, and it was the equivalent of like getting a lobotomy and then training for the Olympics, you know, because it just, there's so much stuff that I had to unlearn in normal guitar playing and then replace with new techniques so that I could play this music without having it be something I had to think about. You know, I had to have total cognition and full muscle memory of the new way of playing. So really, you know, that is a massive undertaking, and just a small example of how that all took place was that, you know, I could learn a hard part of a song that would be maybe something that would go by in less than 2 seconds, but it would take me, you know, probably 6 or 7 months of practice, 8 hours a day, to be able to play the part that goes by in 2 seconds, because it was so impossible to play and required a different approach. So once that started to become playable, it opened the door for me to be able to do a lot of other things that I never thought I'd be able to do on guitar. So I've sort of really transformed what I'm capable of by leaps and bounds.
And that's oftentimes the case with learning any kind of music. Sometimes it's like a bar. It's just a measure. It's a little thing that's the toughest part of a piece to learn. Whereas maybe in a 5-10 minute piece, it's just that little thing, but it takes a lot of time. So I know what you're talking about there, although not nearly the level of your technique. You obviously have the Guitar Masterclass coming up on the 9th, which I'll go into a little bit more. But speaking of technique, how would you compare your technique, maybe pre-Zappa Plays Zappa, to your father's technique? And you mentioned how you kind of had to unlearn and relearn. How is your technique different today compared to before you started learning your father's parts?
Well, the main difference is I was always technically proficient in terms of, you know, for people that don't know anything about guitar, you know, the biggest challenge you have is that it's ultimately a percussive instrument because, you know, your right hand, well, if you're right-handed anyway, is the strumming hand, and you have 6 strings to deal with, and you have to get a pick to articulate the notes within those 6 strings. And then your left hand is the hand that's placing the fingers on the fretboard. And so what you have is 2 things that have to be synchronized. So if your left hand can play the fast parts, but your right hand can't, you have a terrible result because it just sounds sloppy and there's just no articulation. And so that's always the challenge, is to get the right hand to be synchronized with the left hand. But when you're talking about things that have complete crazy intervallic leaps and you have no time to maneuver the pick between the strings, you start having to use other fingers on your right hand to capture notes in the process, and you have to start, you know, contorting your hand to mute strings that you don't want to hear while you're playing other things. So it's a whole crazy thing that your brain has to take care of. Besides trying to actually learn the music, you know, it's about how the parts can translate. You know, so it's not worth it to just go out there and fumble through or make it sound muddled. And you know, my purpose for learning the melody stuff is to give people a chance to see what it looks like to play this music. Because, for example, if you were seeing a show and you saw that there's people playing stuff on the keyboards, or when we had a guy playing marimba before, in the audience you can't see over the shoulder perspective to see what they're doing. You see that they're doing something, but you can't see their fingers moving around. So the impact is lessened, but when you see the guitar up front and you know what's required to play this stuff, it does make a difference to people, because they think, wait a minute, how are they doing that? You know, So you hear the parts I'm playing in unison with other people or in harmony in some cases. And it really does make an impact. I remember watching Steve Vai play these things in my dad's band and thinking, one day I want to learn those melodies. Right now that seems impossible, but one day, so it really, it took, years and years before I was ready to make that leap to do this stuff. Because anything that's really hard, people tend to want to naturally procrastinate and say, I don't know if I want to put myself through this. And I think a lot of people may not have the kind of patience that's required to learn to do this stuff.
The Guitar Masterclass is from 2:30 to 4 o'clock on the 9th, before the concert, which is at 7:30 in the evening. What kind of folks do you want to have come out? Are we looking at guitarists that are only intermediate, advanced, beginner guitarists? What kind of folks do you want to have show up for the masterclass?
I've been doing these for a while now, and it really is beneficial for players of all skill levels, even total beginners, because total beginners have a good advantage to come and learn some ideas where they can learn the right stuff without having to unlearn other things. So if you've been playing for a long time and then you are introduced to complete new concepts, the procrastination element of, do I want to spend the time to do that, comes in, because that's the unlearning process. But what I've developed for the classes really is it's a conversation about what you can get out of the guitar, and different kinds of approaches, technical. There's demonstrations of technique, but there's a lot of conversations and questions between me and the students about improvisational strategies and just answering technical questions that they may have an interest in. But ultimately, what I've seen is that the majority of the people that do come are at a beginner to intermediate level, and so it's great when there's people that have a lot of playing experience, and then I can dive deeper for some of those people. But I generally try to balance it so that everybody can get something out of it, because it's usually about 90 minutes or less, and so there's a lot to cover in that time frame. But we always tell people they should bring a guitar and come down and have fun.
All right. Well, we got about a couple minutes left, and I got a couple more questions for you. First, I understand you are writing a book. Tell us a bit about what the project is.
Well, there's been a lot of people that have been interested in stories about growing up in our house, and stories about the music, and so there's a lot of information about all of those things. But my own life has taken a few interesting twists and turns post-divorce, and there's a lot to say about how the family court system is completely broken, and how it affects fathers' rights. So there's elements in there that I think will be helpful to fathers, because I've been having a whale of a time dealing with the court.
Mm-hmm. And when do you think the book's going to be coming out?
Not sure, but it's something that I'm in the process of organizing and pulling together. So hopefully it'll be something that I can make an enjoyable read for people, and have it maybe next year, but I'm not exactly sure.
Lastly, it's kind of a three-part question, but all kind of about the same thing. Relating to the concerts, which song, first question, which song do you enjoy most playing on stage? Second question, which song does over the years, has the crowd seemingly most reacted to? What do they most enjoy? And third, if there's any tune you could perform from your father's repertoire, or really anywhere, any repertoire, what would it be?
Few different questions with some answers there. The music is really exciting to play live, and there's a certain energy that happens on some of the songs based on the way that they're created. So, for example, there are a lot of songs that have a structure that have an improvisational moment that can take place within the song. So if you have the difficult themes and tricky parts to execute, but then you have a wide open landscape to improvise, that whole process is, I can only relate to it as like an athletic event, because you have things you have to execute and do well, and you're working as a team to do these things, and then you have this fun element of improvisation. So what happens is the audience gets to hear that song differently every time that song is performed because of the improvisational element. So overall, that's one of the things I enjoy most about playing the music, and there are several songs that have that type of structure. So over the years, I've really enjoyed playing songs like Inca Roads, Zombie Wolf, and songs like Torture Never Stops, things that have substantial solo things that really carry some weight. And there's a new one that I've just learned for this tour, called Duke of Prunes, that has a guitar sound that induces natural feedback, and so that one has this really interesting and fun thing to do because the feedback is different all the time, just depending on the distance you are from your amplifier. So, I really have fun playing all the music, but I do particularly get into solo parts, just because that's where I connect with my father the most, in trying to sort of play in context to the music in a style that he would have employed himself, and I also use my own personality within that context as well. But I guess there's still a lot of songs that we haven't learned, but some of my favorites to play are some of the ones I mentioned. Inca Roads, Peaches on Regalia is always a favorite for me, and fan reaction to the stuff, they typically really appreciate when we're playing some of the hardest stuff, because it's recognizable that this is quite a human feat. It's not, they like to see it done, and then they can appreciate the music more, like the fact that it was even written to begin with.
Well, it's going to be a great show coming up on October 9th, 7:30 p.m., State Theater. Zappa Plays Zappa, in particular noting the 40th anniversary of Roxy and Elsewhere, and the guitar masterclass before that, 2:30 to 4 o'clock as well. Well, enjoy your visit here to Eau Claire coming up next week. We're not too cold just yet. We're not too warm. We're very autumnal right now. So I think you guys will enjoy your time here in western Wisconsin.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We always like coming through that area. So it's going to be a good show. Lots and lots of new things that we haven't played before that are going to be making their way through this tour. So should be really a fun show to check out for the variety of all the music.
We're all looking forward to it. Have fun at when you come here to Eau Claire, and thanks for talking with us, Dweezil.
Thank you.